When Mira dragged the whimpering wolf pup from the flooding ravine, she didn't know the muddy, half-drowned creature carried royal blood, or that saving it would mark her for death. The storm had come without warning, the kind that turned the forest into a drowning beast. Rain hammered through the pines like nails, and the wind screamed warnings that Mira had learned to ignore 3 years ago. Nothing the forest threw at her could be worse than what her own kind had done. She'd been checking her snares when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the chaos of wind and water. A cry, thin and desperate, cutting through the thunder. Myra's wolf stirred beneath her skin, uneasy. Not your problem, she told herself. She'd survived this long by keeping her head down and her distance from anything that smelled like trouble. But the cry came again, weaker this time, and her feet were moving before her brain could catch up. The ravine's edge had become a waterfall. Brown water churned 30 feet below, carrying branches and debris in its violent current. And there, wedged between 2 rocks on a crumbling ledge, was a ball of gray fur barely bigger than her 2 fists. Damn it. Mira shifted without thinking, her human form better suited for climbing. The rain plastered her dark hair to her skull as she picked her way down the muddy slope, grabbing at roots that might give way any second. The pup's cries had stopped. That was worse than the screaming. She reached the ledge just as it started to crack. Her fingers closed around scruff and bone, the pup weighed almost nothing, and she hauled them both up, clawing through mud and loose stone until they collapsed on solid ground. The pup didn't move. Mira shifted back to wolf form, her larger body blocking the wind as she nosed the small creature. Male, maybe 8 weeks old. His heartbeat was there but fading, a flutter against her sensitive hearing. She grabbed him by the scruff again and ran. Her den was a cave she'd expanded over 3 years of exile, hidden behind a waterfall that was currently swollen to twice its normal size. She had to wade through knee-deep water to reach it, holding the pup above the current. Inside, it was dry and dark and safe, or as safe as anything got for a rogue wolf with no pack and no future. She laid the pup on her pile of stolen blankets and shifted human again. Her hands were better for this. He was so small, so still. She'd seen death enough times to recognize it waiting in the wings. Come on, she muttered, pressing on his tiny chest, willing his lungs to work. You didn't survive that fall just to quit on me now. Water trickled from his mouth. Then more. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound, and sucked in a breath. His eyes cracked open, pale gold, unfocused with pain and fever. That's when Mira saw the markings. 3 silver streaks running from his right ear down his shoulder, each one perfect and symmetrical. Her breath stopped. She'd seen those markings exactly once, from a distance, when the Alpha King's procession had passed through her birth territory years ago. Thornclaw. This pup was Thornclaw. No. She sat back on her heels, water dripping from her hair onto the stone floor. No, no, no. The most powerful pack in the northern kingdoms. The bloodline that had ruled for 6 generations. And she'd just dragged their pup into her exile cave like a stray rabbit. She should put him back. Take him to the border, leave him where his pack could find him. Mira had enough problems without adding kidnapping royalty to the list. But when she reached for him, the pup whimpered and pressed closer to her warmth. His whole body was shaking, and his breathing sounded wrong, shallow and quick. Just until the fever breaks, Mira told herself. Then you're someone else's problem. She built up the fire and wrapped him in the driest blanket she had. There were herbs hanging from the cave's ceiling, feverfew, willow bark, yarrow. 3 years alone had taught her to be her own healer. She crushed them into a paste with rainwater and coaxed it down the pup's throat. He fought her weakly, but swallowed. That's when she felt it under her fingers, something hard and foreign beneath his fur. She parted the wet strands carefully, and her stomach dropped. An arrow shaft, broken off close to the skin. Silver-tipped, from the smell. Someone had shot this pup. Someone had used silver, the one metal that could kill their kind, and aimed it at a child barely old enough to hunt on his own. Myra's hands shook as she examined the wound. The arrowhead was still inside, lodged deep in his shoulder. That's why he couldn't heal. Silver poisoning was spreading through his small body, turning his veins to dark lines beneath the skin. "You're not just lost," she whispered. "Someone tried to murder you." The implications crashed over her like the storm outside. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a pup who'd wandered from his pack. This was an assassination attempt on a royal heir. And she'd just made herself a witness. The smart thing would be to dig out the silver and dump the pup at the nearest pack border before dawn. Let the Thornclaws deal with their own conspiracy. Mira had been cast out for a murder she didn't commit. She knew exactly how pack politics worked. Whoever wanted this pup dead had power. Probably had connections. Definitely had more resources than one rogue she-wolf living in a cave. But the pup made a sound in his sleep, pained and trusting, and Mira found herself reaching for her hunting knife instead of the cave entrance. "This is stupid," she muttered, heating the blade in the fire. "This is monumentally, catastrophically stupid." The pup whined when she started cutting, but he was too weak to do more than twitch. Mira worked quickly, her hands steady despite her racing heart. She'd done field surgery on herself more than once. You learn to be resourceful when there was no one else to patch you up. The arrowhead came out in pieces. Silver burned her fingers even through the cloth she'd wrapped them in, and she threw the fragments into the corner like they were cursed. Maybe they were. She packed the wound with yarrow paste and bound it with strips torn from her spare shirt. The pup's breathing eased almost immediately. The poison was out. Now his wolf healing could do the rest. If he lived through the night. Mira settled against the cave wall, the pup curled against her stomach. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the fire crackled and popped, and she tried not to think about what she'd just done. She must have dozed off, because when she opened her eyes, the fire had burned down to coals and something was wrong. The pup was glowing. Not glowing, shifting. His small body rippled and changed, fur receding and bones restructuring, and Mira scrambled backward as a human child appeared where the wolf pup had been. He couldn't have been more than 3 years old. Dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat, the same silver markings visible now as birthmarks on his pale skin. His breathing was still labored, but the transformation had been smooth. Controlled. Impossible. Wolves didn't shift that young. Most couldn't manage it until puberty, and even then it was clumsy and painful for years. Only the most powerful bloodlines could shift in childhood, and only the rarest of those could do it unconsciously, in fever dreams. Only future alphas. Oh, hell. Mira pressed her hands to her face. You're not just royal. You're the heir. The child shifted back in his sleep, becoming a pup again. The silver markings gleamed in the dim light, and Mira understood with sudden, terrible clarity exactly how much danger she was in. This wasn't just about one pup anymore. This was about succession. About power. About whoever stood to gain if the Alpha King's heir died in a convenient accident during a storm. And she just saved him. She could still fix this. She could still walk away. Leave him here with enough supplies to last until someone found him, disappear deeper into the wilderness. She'd survived 3 years alone, she could survive 30 more. But the pup, the heir, made that small, trusting sound again, and Mira knew she was already too far gone. You'd better be worth it, she told the sleeping child. Because keeping you alive is probably going to get me killed. Outside, the storm finally began to break. Lightning illuminated the cave entrance one last time, throwing shadows across the walls like grasping hands. Somewhere in the northern kingdoms, someone was looking for a dead pup and not finding one. The clock was already ticking. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. The scent of blood hung thick in the morning air, and it wasn't from prey. Cale Thornclaw stood in human form at the river's edge, his hands clenched so tight his nails had drawn crescents of blood in his palms. Around him, the destruction he'd wrought in the past 3 days painted the forest in claw marks and shattered trees. His beta, Marcus, kept a careful distance, close enough to help, far enough to survive if Kale's wolf broke free completely. "The trail ends here, my king." Marcus's voice was steady, but his posture screamed wariness. The flooding washed away everything. Kale didn't respond. Couldn't. If he opened his mouth, the howl building in his chest would tear the world apart. His son. His pup. 3 months old and barely weaned, and someone had put a silver arrow in his shoulder and thrown him to the storm. The wolf inside him snarled and thrashed, demanding blood. Demanding vengeance. Demanding he rip apart every living thing until he found the small, perfect creature that was all he had left in this god's-forsaken world. "We need to return to Thornclaw territory," Marcus said quietly. "The pack is vulnerable with you gone. Whoever did this might." "Don't." The word came out as a growl. Kale's eyes flashed gold as his wolf surged against his control. "Don't tell me about duty. Don't tell me about the pack. Don't tell me anything except where my son is." Marcus held his ground, which was why he'd survived as beta for 15 years. "I'm trying to help you find him. But you're no good to him dead, and you're no good to him if you lose yourself completely." Kale's wolf wanted to rip Marcus's throat out for the logic. His human side knew the beta was right. The conflict between them was tearing him apart from the inside. He closed his eyes and let himself remember, not the storm, not the blood, not the empty nursery. Before. 3 months ago. The nursery had smelled like milk and clean blankets and the future. Kale had watched his mate, Sarah, sleep with their newborn son curled against her chest, and he'd thought his heart might actually burst from his chest with how full it felt. "He has your markings," Sarah had whispered, her fingers tracing the 3 silver streaks that proclaimed the pup's royal blood. "Perfect and strong, just like his father. He has your eyes." Kale had brushed his knuckles against the pup's impossibly soft cheek. "And your stubborn chin." Sarah had laughed, but it had turned into a cough. Then another. Blood had flecked her lips. "Sarah?" Kale's world had tilted. "Sarah, what?" Internal bleeding. The healer's voice had been calm and final as she'd rushed in. "The birth tore something that won't heal. I'm sorry, my king. I'm so sorry." Kale had held his mate's hand as the light faded from her eyes. She'd used her last breath to whisper their son's name. "Finn. His name is Finn. Promise me you'll keep him safe." Kale had promised. And he'd failed. "My king." Marcus's voice pulled him back to the present. "We found something." Kale's eyes snapped open. Marcus was holding a piece of fabric, torn and muddy. It smelled like the pup, and something else. Something female and wild and wrong because it wasn't pack. "Rogue," Marcus said grimly. "A she-wolf, from the scent. She was here recently, maybe within the last day." The wolf inside Kale roared to life. A rogue. Some desperate, packless female had found his injured son and taken him. For ransom, probably. Or worse, to sell to his enemies. Rogue wolves were dangerous, unpredictable. They had nothing to lose and everything to gain. "Find her." Kale's voice was barely human. "Send out trackers to every territory within 3 days' run. I want her found, Marcus. I want her brought to me alive so I can tear the truth from her throat Before you what?" Marcus interrupted, which was either brave or suicidal. "Kill the only wolf who might know where Finn is? Think, Kale. If she has him, we need her breathing long enough to tell us." Kale's hands shook with the need to break something. Marcus was right again, and he hated it. "Fine." The word tasted like poison. "Alive. But if my son is hurt, if she's touched one hair on his head, then you can have whatever's left of her after we get Finn back," Marcus finished. "I'll send word to the border packs. Someone will have seen a rogue she-wolf traveling alone. As Marcus loped away to organize the search, Cale turned back to the river. The water had receded overnight, leaving behind mud and debris and no answers. His son's scent was here, faint but unmistakable. And then nothing. Somewhere, Finn was alive. Cale had to believe that. The alternative would shatter what remained of his sanity. He thought of Sarah's last words. "Promise me you'll keep him safe." "I will," Cale whispered to the ghost of his mate. "I'll tear the world apart if I have to, but I'll bring our son home." His wolf howled agreement, and the sound echoed across the mountains like a declaration of war. Mira woke to the pup, River, she'd started calling him, since he'd come from the ravine, licking her face with a tongue that felt like wet sandpaper. "You're feeling better," she muttered, pushing him away gently. "Good. Maybe you'll stop trying to die every 5 minutes." River yipped and pounced on her blanket, his tail wagging. The wound on his shoulder was healing cleanly now that the silver was out, and his eyes were bright and alert. He looked like any normal, healthy pup. Which was exactly the problem. Mira sat up and studied him in the morning light filtering through the cave entrance. The silver markings stood out stark against his gray fur, impossible to miss. Anyone who knew anything about pack politics would recognize those markings instantly. She needed to get rid of him. Today. Before someone came looking. River tilted his head at her, and she felt her resolve crumble like wet sand. "You're going to get me killed," she told him. "You know that, right?" He wagged his tail harder and tried to climb into her lap. Mira caught him and felt the rapid flutter of his heartbeat against her palm, too fast, even for a pup. Something wasn't right. She'd noticed it yesterday, when the fever finally broke. River's breathing would get shallow and quick for no reason, and sometimes he'd stumble like his legs couldn't quite hold him. At first she'd thought it was weakness from the injury, but this felt like something else. Mira shifted to human form and examined him more carefully. His gums were pale, and when she pressed her fingers to his chest, she could feel his heart racing like a trapped bird. Her stomach sank. She'd seen this before, in her birth pack. A pup born with a weak heart, lungs that didn't work quite right. Most didn't survive their first year. "Of course," Mira said to the cave ceiling. "Of course you're not just a royal heir someone tried to murder. You're also sick." River licked her chin, unconcerned with his own mortality. Myra's mind raced. She had basic healing herbs, enough to handle injuries and fevers. But chronic illness was different. That required specialized knowledge, rare plants, maybe even ongoing treatment. She needed foxglove for his heart. Hawthorn berries. Coltsfoot for his breathing. None of which grew anywhere near her territory. Damn it. She set River down and started pacing. Damn it, damn it, damn it. There was a gathering tonight at the neutral grounds, the monthly meeting where rogue wolves and pack outcasts could trade goods without violence. Mira had been a few times over the years, always careful to stay in the shadows and leave before anyone could look too closely at her face. Someone there might have the herb she needed. Or someone there might recognize the royal pup she'd stupidly decided to keep alive. River whimpered, his breathing labored again. He looked up at her with those pale gold eyes, trusting and innocent, and Mira knew she'd already made her choice. "You're worth more trouble than a whole pack of wolves," she told him. "I hope you know that." The neutral grounds were exactly as Mira remembered, a clearing in the forest where 3 territories met and none could claim dominance. Fires burned in a rough circle, and wolves in both forms moved between them, trading herbs, information, and lies. Mira kept to the edges, River hidden in a sling against her chest beneath her cloak. He'd been sleeping for most of the journey, which worried her more than if he'd been whining. The sleep was too deep, too still. She found an old female wolf selling herbs near the eastern edge and traded 3 rabbit pelts for foxglove and hawthorn. The woman's eyes lingered on Myra's face, and she moved on quickly before questions could form. That's when she felt it. A pull, deep in her chest. Like a rope made of starlight and steel had wrapped around her heart and yanked. Myra's breath caught, and her wolf surged forward, suddenly desperate and longing and awake in a way she'd never felt before. No. Not here. Not now. Not him. But her body was already turning, her eyes already searching the crowd, and then she saw him. He stood on the far side of the clearing, massive even in human form, with dark hair and a face carved from stone and fury. Power rolled off him in waves that made every wolf in the vicinity drop their eyes and shrink back. His eyes were pure gold, alpha gold, and they were scanning the crowd with predatory focus. Kale Thornclaw. The Alpha King himself. And his eyes locked on hers. The world stopped. The mate bond snapped into place between them like lightning finding ground, and Mira felt it in every cell of her body. Recognition. Completion. Mine, her wolf howled. Ours. Mate. No. This wasn't possible. This wasn't fair. Kale's nostrils flared, and his expression shifted from shock to something darker. His eyes dropped to the bulge beneath her cloak, and Mira realized with creeping horror that he could smell River. Smell his son on her skin. You. The word cracked across the clearing like thunder. Wolves scattered. Fires were abandoned. Within seconds, Mira stood alone in a circle of empty space as the Alpha King stalked toward her with murder in his eyes. You took him. Kale's voice was barely human, his wolf bleeding through every syllable. You took my son. River stirred against Myra's chest, making a soft sound that carried in the sudden silence. Kale froze, his entire body trembling with the effort of not shifting and tearing her apart where she stood. Where is he? The words came out as a snarl. Give him to me. Now. Myra's hands moved to protect River instinctively, and she saw Kale's eyes track the movement. Saw him register the defensive posture. Saw him decide she was a threat. I saved him, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. He was dying in a ravine with a silver arrow in his shoulder. I pulled it out. I kept him alive. You stole him. Kale was closer now, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his skin. The mate bond thrummed between them, trying to soothe his rage and failing spectacularly. You're a rogue. A kidnapper. Give me my son before I rip you apart. River whimpered, and without thinking, Myra's hand moved to soothe him through the fabric. The gesture was pure instinct, and it made Kale's eyes flash with something beyond rage. Jealousy. His wolf couldn't stand seeing another wolf comfort his pup. Couldn't stand the intimacy of it, the trust that small sound implied. And beneath that, even deeper, his wolf was howling at the impossibility of the situation. This female, this rogue who smelled like his son and felt like his mate, was the enemy. The thief. The one who'd taken everything. You don't understand, Mira started, but Kale moved faster than should have been possible. His hand closed around her throat. Not squeezing, not yet, but the threat was clear. His other hand moved to rip open her cloak, to take his son back by force. Mira did the only thing she could think of. She opened the sling herself and carefully, slowly, lifted River out. The pup blinked sleepy eyes at his father and wagged his tail. Kale's breath stopped. His hand loosened on Myra's throat as he stared at his son, alive, healthy, happy. River yipped and reached for him with tiny paws, and Kale's composure shattered like glass. Finn. The name came out broken. Oh gods, Finn. He took the pup with trembling hands, cradling him against his chest like he might disappear again. River, Finn, licked his father's face enthusiastically, clearly delighted with this new development. For a moment, Kale looked like a man instead of a monster. Grief and relief warred on his face, and his eyes closed as he breathed in his son's scent. Then he looked at Mira, and the alpha was back. You will tell me everything, he said, his voice deadly calm. How you found him. Why you kept him. And if I find out you had anything to do with what happened to him. She saved him, you ungrateful bastard. They both turned to see Marcus emerging from the crowd, his expression grim. I tracked her scent from the river. She was there after the flooding, not before. And she's been living in that territory for years. I checked with the border patrols. She's not part of any conspiracy. Cale's jaw worked, but he didn't argue. His eyes stayed on Mira, calculating and cold despite the mate bond trying to warm them. Then why did she run? He asked. Why hide him instead of returning him to me? Mira met his gaze steadily. Because someone put a silver arrow in a 3-month-old pup and left him to die. Someone from your pack, Alpha King. Your beta just said so himself, you can't trust anyone. So tell me, why would I hand a sick, injured child back to the people who tried to murder him? The word sick made Cale's eyes sharpen. What do you mean, sick? His heart. Mira gestured to Finn, who was starting to wheeze in Cale's arms. He has a chronic condition. That's why I came here. He needs foxglove and hawthorn, herbs I can't find in my territory. As if to prove her point, Finn's breathing became labored, his small body shaking with the effort. Cale's face went pale as he recognized the symptoms Mira had described. No. The word was barely a whisper. No, not this. Not after everything. The Alpha King looked lost, cradling his sick pup while the mate bond pulled him toward a rogue wolf he wanted to hate. Mira saw the exact moment he made his decision, and her stomach dropped. You're coming with me, Cale said flatly. Both of you. To Thornclaw territory. Like hell I am. That wasn't a request. His eyes flashed gold. My son trusts you. He's sick, and you know how to care for him. Until I figure out who tried to kill him and why, you're the only wolf I can be sure isn't part of it. His lip curled. Even if you are his kidnapper. I didn't kidnap him. You kept him instead of returning him. That's close enough. Cale shifted Finn to one arm and grabbed Myra's wrist with the other, his grip unbreakable. You want to keep him alive? Then you'll come help me do it. Refuse, and I'll have you thrown in the cells until this is over. Myra's wolf was torn between submitting to her mate and tearing his throat out for the threat. The human side of her knew she was trapped. If she ran, he'd hunt her down. If she stayed, she'd be walking into a pack full of wolves who'd already tried to commit murder once. And through it all, the mate bond hummed, trying to convince her that this was right. That being near him was where she belonged. She wanted to scream. Fine, Mira bit out. But when this is over, I'm gone. And you can take your mate bond and shove it. Cale's eyes widened slightly, so he'd felt it too, then. Good. Let him be as miserable as she was. Deal, he said coldly. As Marcus organized their departure, Mira watched Cale murmur to his son, his expression softening in ways that made her chest ache. Finn nuzzled into his father's neck, content and trusting. She'd saved the pup's life. And somehow, she'd just sentenced herself to living in the territory of the one wolf who'd already decided she was guilty. The universe, Mira decided, had a truly terrible sense of humor. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 3. The journey to Thornclaw territory took 2 days, and every minute of it was torture. Not because of the pace, Cale set a brutal one, but Mira could keep up. Not because of the guards flanking her on all sides, treating her like a prisoner even though she walked freely. No, the torture came from the mate bond. It wrapped around her like barbed wire, pulling tighter with every step closer to Cale. Her wolf whined and paced, wanting to be near him, wanting to touch him, wanting things that made Myra's human side want to shift and run until her paws bled. Cale wasn't faring much better. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched like he was fighting the urge to reach for her. Every time their eyes met accidentally, the bond flared hot enough to burn, and they both looked away like they'd been scalded. Finn, she had to remember to call him Finn now, whimpered from his father's arms and stretched his tiny paws toward Mira. No. Cale's voice was sharp as he adjusted his grip on the pup. Stop it, Finn. She's not, you don't need her. But Finn disagreed. He whined louder, squirming in Kale's hold, his nose pointed at Mira like a compass finding north. When Kale refused to hand him over, Finn started to cry, real tears, the kind that came with hiccuping sobs and a distress that made every wolf in the vicinity tense. What did you do to him? Kale rounded on Mira, his eyes flashing gold. What kind of rogue magic did you use? He's bonded to you. I didn't do anything, Mira snapped back. I kept him alive. Maybe he just knows the difference between someone who wants to help him and someone who keeps calling his rescuer a kidnapper. Marcus cleared his throat. My king, pups bond to their primary caretakers. She's been caring for him for days. It's natural that he'd. Natural? Kale's laugh was bitter. There's nothing natural about this. She's a rogue. Rogues don't bond with pack pups. There's something wrong here. Finn's cries escalated to screams, his small body shaking with the force of his distress. His breathing started to wheeze, the sickness acting up again, and Mira couldn't take it anymore. Give him to me before he makes himself worse, she said, stepping forward. 3 guards moved to block her. Kale's lip curled in a snarl. You don't give orders here. And you don't know how to calm him down when he's like this. Mira met his glare without flinching. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Unless you want him to work himself into a fever again? The threat of Finn's illness was the only card she had, and she played it ruthlessly. Kale's jaw worked, rage and desperation warring on his face. Finally, he jerked his head at the guards, and they stepped aside. Mira took Finn gently, and the pup's cries cut off like someone had flipped a switch. He buried his face in her neck, his whole body relaxing, and made a small, contented sound that absolutely shredded Kale's composure. You're going to regret this, Kale said quietly, and Mira didn't know if he was talking to her or himself. When we get home and the truth comes out, you're going to wish you'd run while you had the chance. Mira looked down at Finn, now sleeping peacefully in her arms, and felt her heart crack a little more. Probably, she admitted. But he'd be dead if I had. Kale had no answer for that. He turned and kept walking, and Mira followed with Finn tucked against her chest, surrounded by guards who watched her like she might sprout fangs and murder them all at any moment. Maybe this was what she deserved. 3 years ago, her own pack had cast her out for a murder she didn't commit. Now she was walking into another pack's territory, accused of kidnapping their heir. The universe really did have a terrible sense of humor. Thornclaw territory was everything Mira had imagined and worse. The pack land sprawled across a valley ringed by mountains, with the main compound built into the side of a cliff face. Stone and timber buildings rose in tiers, connected by bridges and walkways that made the whole structure look like it had grown from the mountain itself. Wolves in both forms moved through the compound with the easy confidence of people who'd never known exile or hunger. They stopped and stared when Kale's party entered through the main gates. Word had clearly spread, the Alpha King had found his son, and he'd brought back the rogue who took him. Mira kept her head high and her eyes forward, even as hostile glares followed her every step. Finn stirred against her shoulder, still sleeping, and she adjusted her hold on him protectively. Kale. A male voice boomed across the courtyard. Thank the gods. We heard you found him. A wolf approached, tall and broad-shouldered, with the same dark hair as Kale but a softer face. The family resemblance was clear, and when Mira caught his scent, she knew. This was pack, close blood. A brother, maybe, or a cousin. Draven. Kale's voice was neutral, carefully controlled. Finn is safe. But we have complications. Draven's eyes slid to Mira, and something cold moved in their depths before his expression smoothed into concern. This is the rogue who found him. Marcus sent word ahead. The pack owes her a debt. The pack owes her nothing until we know the full truth. Kale's tone made it clear the discussion was over. Call the council. We meet in 1 hour. Draven's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Of course, my king. Whatever you need. As he walked away, Mira felt the hair on the back of her neck rise. There was something off about that wolf. Something that made her want to put herself between him and Finn. She didn't have time to analyze it. Kale was already striding toward a large building at the center of the compound, and the guards were shoving her to follow. The council chamber was carved from stone, with a long table in the center and chairs that looked like thrones. 12 wolves sat around it, the pack's ruling council, from their postures and the way they watched Kale with a mix of deference and judgment. Draven sat at Kale's right hand. Marcus took the left. And Mira stood in the center of the room, surrounded by guards, still holding Finn because the pup had started crying again the moment Kale tried to take him. "This is the rogue." An older female wolf spoke, her silver hair pulled back severely from a face carved with disapproval. "The one who kept our prince hidden for days?" "She claims she saved him," Kale said. His voice was flat, emotionless, the voice of a king, not a father. "She claims she found him injured and dying, and that she removed a silver arrow from his shoulder." Murmurs rippled around the table. Silver meant assassination. Silver meant someone in their own ranks had turned traitor. "Convenient," another council member said, a male with scars across his throat. "A rogue just happens to find our prince? Just happens to save him? And we're supposed to believe she had nothing to do with the attempt on his life?" "I was in my territory when the storm hit," Mira said evenly. "I've been there for 3 years. Ask your border patrols, they've scented me there before. I had no reason to be anywhere near wherever you lost him." "We didn't lose him," the scarred male snarled. "He was taken during a hunt. Separated from his guards and shot with a silver arrow. The kind of attack that requires inside knowledge." "Which I don't have," Mira shot back. "I'm a rogue. I don't know your hunting schedules or your guard rotations. I don't know anything about your pack except that someone tried to murder a pup and failed." "Enough." Kale's voice cut through the rising arguments. "She's told us what she knows. The question is whether we believe her." "I say we don't." The silver-haired woman leaned forward. "Execute her and be done with it. The prince is safe, that's all that matters." Finn whimpered in Myra's arms, and several council members shifted uncomfortably. The pup's obvious attachment to her was making this harder than it should be. "She stays alive until we find out who tried to kill Finn," Kale said. "If she's part of it, she might know something useful. If she's not." He hesitated, and Mira saw the conflict in his eyes. The mate bond was pulling at him, making him question his own judgment. If she's not, then she deserves a trial, not a summary execution. "You're being soft because she's your mate," Draven said quietly. "We can all feel it, Kale. The bond between you. It's clouding your judgment." The room went silent. Myra's breath caught, so they all knew. Everyone could sense it. Kale's hands clenched on the armrests of his chair. "My judgment is clear. She goes to the cells until we have answers. No harm comes to her without my order." "And if she tries to escape?" the scarred male asked. "She won't." Kale's eyes locked on Myra's. "Because if she runs, I'll hunt her to the ends of the earth and make her wish she'd never pulled my son from that ravine." It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise, and the mate bond shivered with dark approval at the thought of the chase. Mira lifted her chin. "I'm not running. I told you I'd help keep him alive, and I will. Lock me up if it makes you feel better, Alpha King. But when he gets sick in the middle of the night and you don't know what to do, you'll come crawling to my cell anyway." Kale stood, power radiating off him in waves. "Take her to the lower dungeons. Post guards. And someone get my son away from her before I forget I'm trying to be civilized about this." A female guard approached and tried to take Finn. The pup screamed and clung to Mira with surprising strength, his claws catching in her shirt. The sound was pure terror, the kind that made even hardened warriors flinch. "Stop," Kale barked. "Just, stop." He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and stood close enough that Mira could feel his breath on her face. The mate bond surged, trying to pull them together, and they both fought it with visible effort. "Please," Kale said, and the words sounded like it cost him everything. "Give him to me gently. Talk to him. Make him understand he's safe with me." It was the first time he'd asked instead of commanded. Mira looked down at Finn, whose pale gold eyes were wide and frightened, and felt her heart twist. "Hey, little river," she murmured, using her old name for him. "Your papa's right here. He's going to take good care of you, I promise. I'll be close by if you need me." Finn's whimpering quieted, but he didn't let go of her shirt. "I know you're scared," Mira continued, "but he loves you so much. More than anything in the whole world. And I need you to be brave for me, okay? Can you be brave?" Slowly, reluctantly, Finn loosened his grip. Kale took him with trembling hands, cradling him close, and Finn buried his face in his father's neck with a sound that was half sob, half acceptance. "Thank you," Kale said, and Mira couldn't tell if he meant it or hated her for it. The guards closed in and dragged her away before she could answer. The dungeons were exactly as miserable as expected: cold stone, iron bars, and a bucket in the corner that Mira refused to acknowledge. She paced the small cell, her wolf snarling and throwing itself against her control. "Mate," her wolf insisted. "Our mate is up there. Our pup needs us." "He's not our pup," Mira said out loud. "And Kale is not our mate. We don't have a pack. We don't have anyone." Her wolf didn't believe her. And if Mira was honest, neither did she. Hours passed. Then more. The guards changed shifts twice, neither pair speaking to her beyond checking that she was still breathing. Then, in the deepest part of the night, she heard it: footsteps running, voices shouting, and a sound that made her blood freeze. Finn, screaming. Mira was on her feet and at the bars before she could think. What's happening? What's wrong with him? The guards ignored her. The footsteps faded, and Finn's cries turned to gasping wheezes that she could hear even from the dungeons. His heart. It was his heart again, the sickness flaring up worse than before. "Let me out." Mira grabbed the bars and shook them. "He needs foxglove and hawthorn. He needs the healing ritual or he's going to die." "Quiet, rogue," one guard snapped. "I'm not joking. His condition, it's not something you can just fix with normal healing. There's a ritual, something she stopped, because she'd never told anyone about her past, about what she'd been before exile. "Please. Just get Kale. Tell him I can save Finn, but he has to let me out." The guards exchanged glances. The Alpha King gave strict orders. "Your prince is dying." Myra's voice cracked. "Do you want to explain to your Alpha that you let his son die because you were following orders?" One guard wavered. The other held firm. "We don't take orders from rogues." Mira screamed her frustration and kept screaming, kept shaking the bars, until her hands bled and her throat was raw. Then the dungeon door burst open and Kale was there, still in sleep clothes, his hair wild and his eyes desperate. "You can save him," he demanded. "You swear it?" "Yes. But I need to do it now." "How long has he been seizing?" "Seizing?" Kale's face went gray. 5 minutes. Maybe 10. The healer says his heart is failing. Open the cell. If you're lying, if this is some trick, then kill me after. Mira grabbed the bars, leaning as close as she could get. "I don't care what you do to me, but let me save your son first." Kale's hand shook as he pulled the key from the guard's belt and unlocked the cell. Mira pushed past him and ran, following the sound of Finn's labored breathing to the royal chambers on the upper level. The room was chaos. A healer bent over Finn's small form on the bed, her hands glowing with healing magic that wasn't working. Draven stood in the corner, his expression unreadable. Pack members crowded the doorway, watching their prince die. Mira shoved through them and went to her knees beside the bed. Finn's eyes were rolled back, his small body convulsing. Foam flecked his lips. Out, she barked. Everyone out except Kale. Now. You don't give orders, the healer started. Out. Myra's voice cracked like a whip, and something in her tone made even Draven step back. The room cleared. Kale stayed, hovering near the bed like he wanted to grab Finn and run but didn't know where to go. What do you need? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The herbs I bought at the gathering. And water, clean and cold. And something silver, a coin, a piece of jewelry, anything. Kale moved fast, gathering what she needed. Mira crushed the foxglove and hawthorn together, mixing them with water to form a paste. Her hands knew the movements like breathing, muscle memory from a life she'd tried to forget. Hold him still, she told Kale. This is going to hurt him before it helps. She spread the paste over Finn's chest, right above his heart, and began to chant. The words were old, older than packs, older than territories. Her grandmother had taught them to her before the exile, before everything went wrong. Healing wasn't just about herbs. It was about will, about pouring your own life force into another and trusting you'd both survive it. Myra's wolf rose up, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't fight it. Her eyes flashed silver, not gold like an alpha, not amber like a normal wolf. Silver. The color of moonlight and magic and bloodlines everyone thought had died out generations ago. Kale sucked in a breath. Yora. Don't talk, Mira ground out. Her hands were glowing now, the same silver as her eyes, and she pressed them over Finn's heart. Just hold him. The healing ritual took everything she had. She felt her own heartbeat slow to match Finn's erratic rhythm, felt the sickness in him like poison in her own veins. Her wolf poured strength into the pup, life force flowing between them like a river finding its course. Finn's convulsions slowed. His breathing eased. The deathly pale color of his gums started to pink. And then, impossibly, a bond snapped into place between them, not the same as a mate bond, but just as powerful. Protector and protected. Healer and patient. Imprinted. Mira gasped and pulled back, her hands shaking. Finn's eyes were closed, his breathing deep and steady. Sleeping, not dying. What was that? Kale's voice was hoarse. That light, your eyes. Healer Wolf, said a voice from the doorway. They both turned to see Draven standing there, his expression carefully neutral. But his eyes were calculating and cold. Healer wolves have been extinct for 50 years, Draven continued. Or so we thought. They could cure any illness, mend any wound. And they could imprint on wolves near death, becoming their lifelong protectors. His smile didn't reach his eyes. That's why the pup bonded to her, Kale. She didn't bewitch him. She imprinted on him when he was dying. Now she's bound to protect him for as long as they both live. Kale looked between Mira and his sleeping son, understanding and suspicion warring on his face. Why didn't you tell me? Because healer wolves were hunted to extinction for a reason, Mira said tiredly. Some packs thought we were too powerful. Others wanted to control us, use us as weapons. My grandmother told me to hide what I was or I'd never know a day of peace. She laughed bitterly. Look how well that worked out. You saved his life. Kale's voice was quiet. Again. I told you I would. They stared at each other, the mate bond humming between them, and Mira saw the exact moment Kale's worldview started to crack. She wasn't a kidnapper. She wasn't a threat. She was a healer wolf who'd imprinted on his son, which meant she was physically incapable of hurting Finn. It also meant she could never leave. You're not going back to the dungeons, Kale said finally. You'll stay in the guest quarters, under guard. And you'll continue treating Finn until he's well. And then? Mira asked. Kale's jaw tightened. Then we'll figure out what the hell to do with you. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. But it was something. Mira looked down at Finn, feeling the new bond settle into her bones like roots finding soil. The pup had survived another night. That would have to be enough. She didn't see Draven's expression as he slipped from the room. She didn't see the murder in his eyes, or the way his hands clenched into fists. She didn't know that by revealing what she was, she'd just signed her own death warrant. Not yet. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. Cale couldn't sleep. He stood at the window of his private study, watching the pre-dawn light creep across Thornclaw territory, and tried not to think about the silver-eyed wolf sleeping 3 doors down from his son's room. Healer wolf. The words kept circling his mind like wolves around prey. He'd thought they were myth, stories his grandmother told to explain the old magic before packs became organized and brutal. But Mira had glowed with power older than pack law, and she'd saved Finn's life with nothing but herbs and will. She'd also imprinted on his son, which meant she was bound to Finn for life. Bound to protect him, to sense when he was in danger, to literally give her life for his if necessary. Which meant Cale couldn't kill her, couldn't exile her, couldn't do any of the things his council was demanding. Finn needed her. And more than that, Cale's wolf wouldn't let him hurt her. The mate bond had sunk its claws in deep, and every instinct screamed at him to go to her, claim her, make sure she was safe. He hated it. Hated that his body betrayed him every time she was near. Hated that he'd wanted to execute the one wolf who might actually save his son. But most of all, he hated that he'd started to doubt his own judgment about her. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Come. Marcus entered, looking like he hadn't slept either. The border patrols reported in. No sign of suspicious activity, but I had them check the archives like you asked. He set a leather-bound file on Cale's desk. This is everything we have on Mira Ashwood. The name felt strange on his tongue. He'd been thinking of her as the rogue for so long that hearing her actual name made her real in a way he wasn't ready for. Cale opened the file and started reading. Mira Ashwood. Born to the Shadowpine Pack, daughter of the pack's head healer. Showed signs of healer abilities at age 15. At 19, accused of poisoning Alpha Gareth's daughter, Isla, with wolfsbane during a pack celebration. The daughter survived but fell into a coma-like state and has not awakened in 3 years. Mira was tried by pack council, found guilty, and exiled. She has lived as a rogue ever since. There was more, details about the trial, witness statements, the evidence against her. It all looked damning. A jealous young healer, angry that the Alpha's daughter was more beautiful, more powerful. Poison in a cup of wine. Isla collapsing during the celebration, convulsing, her wolf trapped in a half-shift that left her suspended between forms. But as Cale read, something nagged at him. The evidence was almost too perfect. Too neat. Every piece pointing to Mira with no room for doubt. What do you think? Marcus asked quietly. I think someone wanted her gone. Cale closed the file. Healers can sense poison, can't they? Why would she use it when she'd know exactly what it would do? Maybe she counted on the chaos to hide her involvement. Or maybe. Marcus hesitated. Maybe she's exactly what they said she was. A rogue who got caught. Cale's wolf snarled at the suggestion. The mate bond wouldn't let him believe it, kept insisting that Mira was innocent, that she'd been wronged. But he'd trusted his instincts before and been wrong. Sarah had died because he'd trusted the wrong healer, believed them when they said she'd be fine after the birth. His son had nearly died because he'd trusted his guards to keep Finn safe. He couldn't afford to trust blindly anymore. I want to talk to her, Cale said. Alone. No guards, no council. Just us. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's either brave or stupid, my king. Probably both. Cale stood and headed for the door. But if she's going to be bound to my son for life, I need to know who she really is. Mira was awake when Cale knocked. She'd been awake for hours, lying in the too-soft bed in the guest quarters and staring at the ceiling, feeling Finn's heartbeat through the imprint bond like a second pulse in her chest. The pup was sleeping peacefully, his breathing steady and strong. The healing had worked. He'd live to see another day. But Mira knew it wasn't over. Finn's condition was chronic, not cured. He'd need treatments regularly, maybe for the rest of his life. Which meant she was trapped here, bound to a pack that didn't want her and a mate who'd threatened to hunt her to the ends of the earth. When Kale knocked, her wolf perked up with pathetic eagerness. Mira told it to shut up. "Come in." He entered without the usual guards, which surprised her. He was dressed simply, dark pants and a shirt that did nothing to hide the raw power in his frame. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were shadows under his eyes. The mate bond surged the moment he crossed the threshold. Mira felt it like a physical pull, her body wanting to go to him, to close the distance, to touch. She stayed exactly where she was on the bed and crossed her arms. "Here to threaten me again?" she asked. "Or are we going straight to the accusations this time?" Kale's jaw tightened. "I read your file. About what happened with your old pack." Myra's spine went rigid. "Then you know I'm a poisoner and a liar." "Congratulations. You were right all along. I know what they said you did." Kale moved closer, and Mira had to fight not to shift away. "I want to hear your version." "Why?" "So you can decide which story you like better." Mira laughed bitterly. "I told them the truth 3 years ago. I told them I didn't poison Isla, that I tried to save her when she collapsed, that someone else must have done it. They didn't believe me then. Why would you believe me now?" "Because you saved my son." Kale stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could smell him, pine and smoke and something wild that made her wolf whine. "Twice. And you're imprinted on him, which means you're physically incapable of harming him. If you were really a poisoner, really someone who hurt innocent wolves, you wouldn't have that kind of bond." Mira stared at him, trying to find the trick. The trap. But his eyes were steady, genuine, and the mate bond hummed with sincerity. "I didn't do it," she said quietly. "Isla was my friend. We grew up together. I was making a healing draft for her. She'd been feeling sick for weeks, asked me to help. I prepared the medicine, brought it to the celebration in a flask. But when I went to give it to her, someone had already poured her a cup of wine. She drank it before I could stop her, and..." Myra's hands clenched. She started convulsing. "I tried to heal her, but the poison was something I'd never seen before. Wolfsbane mixed with something else, something dark. By the time I figured out what it was, she was already gone, not dead, but trapped. Her wolf couldn't shift back, and her human side couldn't wake up. And they blamed you. The flask I'd brought tested positive for the same poison. Someone had switched it out, contaminated my medicine while I wasn't looking." Mira met his gaze. "They found me guilty in less than a day. The alpha wanted blood for his daughter, and I was convenient. A healer who could have made the poison, who had access to Isla, who couldn't prove her innocence." Kale was quiet for a long moment. "Why would someone frame you?" "I don't know. I've spent 3 years trying to figure it out." Mira stood and started pacing, unable to sit still. "Maybe they wanted to get rid of the healer bloodline. Maybe I saw something I shouldn't have. Or maybe I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Healers can sense curses, can't they?" Kale asked suddenly. "Dark magic, blood curses, that kind of thing?" Mira stopped pacing. "Yes." "Why?" But Kale was already moving toward the door. "Because I think I know why someone wanted you gone. And if I'm right, we're all in more danger than I thought. They formed an alliance out of necessity, not trust. Kale needed to find out who'd tried to kill Finn, and now, who'd framed Mira. Mira needed to keep Finn alive and maybe, possibly, clear her name. So they worked together, investigating in secret while the pack watched and whispered. It was torture in ways Mira hadn't anticipated. The mate bond made everything harder. They couldn't be in the same room for more than a few minutes without the pull becoming almost unbearable. Mira would catch herself leaning toward him, her wolf pushing against her control, wanting to mark him as hers. And Kale, she could see him fighting the same battle, his hands clenching whenever she got too close, his eyes tracking her movements with hungry intensity. They kept a careful distance and pretended the bond didn't exist. The attack on Finn happened during a hunt, Kale said one night, spreading maps across his study table. Mira stood on the opposite side, as far away as the room would allow. Only senior pack members knew the route. That's 20 wolves, including my council. Any of them have a motive? Mira studied the maps, trying to ignore how good Kale smelled. Someone who'd benefit from Finn's death? Kale's expression darkened. My cousin, Draven, is next in line if Finn doesn't survive. But he's family. He's been loyal for years. Family's the easiest to trust and the hardest to suspect. Mira had learned that lesson the hard way. What do you actually know about him? He's my father's brother's son. He's been beta trained since childhood. Kale stopped, frowning. He travels a lot. Says it's pack business, maintaining alliances. But now that I think about it, I don't always know where he goes. Where was he when Finn was attacked? Leading the hunt. He was the one who found Finn's guards dead and raised the alarm. Kale's frown deepened. But that doesn't mean anything. He could have hired someone else to do it. Mira pulled out the file on her own case, the one Marcus had reluctantly given her. Draven's name is in here too. He was visiting Shadowpine Pack 3 years ago when Isla was poisoned. He testified at my trial, said he'd seen me acting suspicious. Their eyes met across the table, and the realization hit them both at the same time. It's him, Mira whispered. Draven poisoned Isla and framed me. Then he tried to kill Finn. But why? What's the connection? Before Kale could answer, a howl split the night, the alarm call for danger inside the territory. They ran. The nursery was chaos. Wolves in both forms crowded the hallway, and Mira smelled blood before she saw it. The guards posted outside Finn's room were down, their throats torn out. Inside, a figure in dark clothes stood over Finn's crib with a blade raised. Mira didn't think. She shifted mid-stride and launched herself at the attacker, slamming into them and sending the blade skittering across the floor. They rolled together, claws and teeth flashing, and Mira felt pain explode across her ribs as the attacker raked her with something sharp. Then Kale was there, his alpha form massive and terrifying, and he had the attacker by the throat. The figure went limp, and Kale shifted back to human, breathing hard. Who sent you? He snarled. But the attacker just smiled, and bit down on something hidden in their cheek. Poison. They convulsed once and went still, dead before they could be interrogated. Mira. Kale's voice was sharp with alarm. She tried to answer, but her legs gave out. She looked down and saw the blade on the floor, its edge still wet with her blood. And she smelled it, the same poison that had taken down Isla. Wolfsbane and something darker. No. Kale was beside her, catching her before she hit the ground. No, you're not, you can't. Finn, Mira gasped. Her vision was blurring, but through the imprint bond, she could feel the pup's terror. Is he? He's safe. You saved him. Kale's hands were shaking as he pressed them to her wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Stay with me. Just stay with me. But the poison was spreading fast, turning her veins black beneath her skin. She'd seen this before, knew exactly how it ended. Trapped between forms, her wolf and human sides at war until there was nothing left. I'm sorry, she whispered. Tell Finn, tell him I'm sorry. Don't you dare. Kale's voice cracked. Don't you dare leave me when I just figured out you're innocent. The mate bond flared between them, burning bright and desperate, and Mira felt Kale's wolf surge forward with wild determination. There's a ritual, he said, his voice rough. A forbidden one. The Alpha's binding. I can tie my life force to yours, give you my strength to fight the poison. You'll die if I die, Mira managed. The bond, it goes both ways. I know. Kale's eyes were blazing gold. I don't care. I'm not losing my mate. It was the first time he'd called her that. The first time he'd acknowledged what they were to each other. Mira wanted to argue, to tell him he was being stupid, that she wasn't worth it. But the poison was stealing her voice, her strength, her wolf. Kale began to chant in the old language, the words harsh and powerful. His hands glowed with alpha magic, not silver like Myra's healer power, but pure gold. He pressed them over her heart and her wound, and pain exploded through her as his life force poured into her veins. The poison fought back, burning and clawing. But Kale's power was stronger, relentless, and it wrapped around her like armor. The mate bond amplified everything, creating a connection so deep Mira could feel his heartbeat as if it were her own. Live, his wolf commanded, and hers had no choice but to obey. The poison began to retreat, pushed back by the flood of alpha magic. Myra's wolf latched onto it desperately, using it to heal, to fight, to survive. When the ritual ended, they were both gasping. Kale collapsed beside her, sweat dripping down his face, his hands still glowing faintly. That was incredibly stupid, Mira whispered. Probably. Kale's laugh was breathless. But you're alive. So are you. For now. He turned his head to look at her, and the weight of what they'd done settled between them. We're bound now. Permanently. If you die, I die. If I die, we're stuck with each other. Mira should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something dangerously close to relief. Great. Just great. But neither of them moved away. The bond hummed with satisfaction, and for the first time since she'd found Finn in that ravine, Mira felt like she might actually survive this. She woke in darkness to someone else's memories. Not her memories. She'd never been in this room before, had never worn this dress or tasted this wine. But the images were vivid, real, playing behind her eyes like she was living them. A party. Music and laughter. A handsome wolf offering her a cup of wine. To your health, Isla. Draven's smile. Draven's voice. Drinking. The world tilting. Convulsions. Pain. Darkness. And then nothing. Suspended. Trapped. Screaming with no voice. Mira gasped and sat up, her heart racing. She was back in the guest quarters, bandaged and whole. But the memories lingered, foreign and terrible. Isla's memories. The imprint bond had done something when she'd nearly died. It had connected her to another wolf trapped in the same kind of suspended state, and she'd seen the truth in those frozen memories. Draven had poisoned Isla. Not to kill her, but to trap her, because healers could sense curses, and Isla would have been able to sense what was wrong with him. Myra's hands shook as she reached for her healer senses, extending them carefully. She'd been so focused on Finn that she hadn't scanned the pack for anything else. But now she searched, seeking the dark magic she'd felt in Isla's memories. And she found it. The curse wrapped around Draven like chains, old and terrible and hungry. It was changing him, transforming him into something neither wolf nor human. Something monstrous. And it needed pure alpha blood to break. Finn's blood. Mira was moving before she could think, racing down the hallway toward Finn's new room. They'd moved him after the attack. But when she burst through the door, Kale was already there, holding their sleeping son. You felt it too, he said quietly. The curse. Mira crossed the room and put a hand on Finn's small head, feeling his heartbeat through the imprint bond. Draven's cursed. That's why he poisoned Isla, she would have sensed it and exposed him. That's why he tried to kill Finn. He needs his blood to break the curse. And he's still out there. Kale's voice was deadly calm. Still in my pack, pretending to be loyal. They looked at each other over Finn's sleeping form, the mate bond and the imprint bond and the alpha's binding all tangling together into something unbreakable. "We end this," Mira said. Kale's eyes flashed gold. "Together." Outside, Draven watched the window where light spilled from Finn's room, and his smile was sharp with teeth that were starting to look less and less like a wolf's. The curse was accelerating. He was running out of time. Which meant he'd have to take what he needed by force. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 5, Blood Moon Rising. Myra's revelation hit the pack like a thunderclap. By dawn, word had spread through Thornclaw territory. Draven was cursed, had been for years, and he tried to murder the prince to break it. The pack fractured instantly. Some believed her. Others called it convenient lies from a rogue trying to save her own skin. And Draven was gone. He left in the night, Marcus reported grimly, standing in Kale's study with maps spread across the desk. Took 12 wolves with him, his most loyal supporters. They're camped at the northern border, just inside neutral territory. Kale's hands clenched on the map's edge. How many believe his version? Enough. Marcus's expression was troubled. He's claiming you've been bewitched by the rogue, that she's manipulated you through the mate bond. He says she cursed him to hide her own crimes, and that you're too weak to see the truth. Of course he is. Mira stood by the window, watching the sun rise over mountains that suddenly felt like a trap. Through the imprint bond, she could feel Finn sleeping peacefully upstairs, guarded by wolves she prayed she could trust. He's been planning this for years. He's not going to surrender quietly. A howl rose from the northern border, long and challenging, carrying across the valley with unmistakable intent. Kale's wolf surged forward, answering instinctively. The sound that tore from his throat was pure dominance, pure rage, and every wolf in the compound dropped their eyes in automatic submission. When silence fell again, Marcus spoke quietly. He's issued a formal challenge. Trial by combat under the blood moon. 3 nights from now. Myra's blood went cold. No. Kale, you can't. I have to. Kale's voice was flat, final. Pack law is clear. When an alpha is challenged for leadership, only combat can settle it. If I refuse, he takes the pack by default. And if you fight and lose? Mira crossed the room to stand in front of him. He'll take Finn. He'll kill him to break the curse, and there won't be anything I can do to stop it. Then I won't lose. But they both knew the truth. Kale was weakened from the alpha's binding, his life force tied to Myra's. The ritual had saved her life, but it had cost him. And Draven had been enhanced by whatever dark magic had cursed him, growing stronger even as the curse ate away at his humanity. There has to be another way, Mira said desperately. Kale's hand came up to cup her face, and the gesture was so gentle, so unexpected, that her breath caught. There isn't. This is what it means to be alpha, to fight for your pack, even when you know you might not win. The mate bond flared between them, warm and aching, and Mira leaned into his touch before she could stop herself. Then we make sure you do win, she said. Training began immediately. Mira had never trained an alpha before, had never used healer techniques for combat. But her grandmother's lessons had included more than just healing, they'd included the old ways, the magic that existed before packs became civilized and brutal. Healers were warriors once, her grandmother had told her. We fought alongside alphas, channeling our power through them. 2 halves of a whole, balanced and deadly. Mira had never understood what that meant. Not until now. Close your eyes, she told Kale on the first morning. They stood in a private training clearing, far from curious eyes. Feel the bond between us, not the mate bond, the alpha's binding. Can you sense where my strength ends and yours begins? Kale frowned but obeyed. It's blurred. Like we're bleeding into each other. Good. That's exactly what we need. Mira placed her hand over his heart, and her palm began to glow silver. The binding didn't just tie our lives together. It created a channel. I can send my healer energy through you, and you can use it to enhance your alpha strength. Show me. Mira closed her eyes and pushed. Her power flowed down the bond, silvery bright and ancient, and she felt Kale gasp as it hit him. His muscles tensed, his wolf surging forward with renewed strength, and when he opened his eyes they were glowing, not just gold, but shot through with threads of silver. Holy gods, he breathed. Now attack me. Kale hesitated. Mira. We don't have time for chivalry. Attack me like I'm Draven. Like I'm trying to kill your son. Something dark flashed in Kale's eyes, and he moved. He was fast, faster than any wolf Mira had ever seen. But with her power flowing through him, she could sense his intent a split second before he acted. She dodged, spinning away, and sent a pulse of energy through the bond that made him stumble. You're holding back, she said. Don't. They fought for hours, testing the limits of their connection. Mira learned to read Kale's combat instincts, to feed him strength exactly when he needed it. Kale learned to trust the bond, to let Mira guide him when his own senses failed. It was intimate in ways that had nothing to do with touching. Every time Mira sent her power through him, she felt his wolf, his thoughts, his soul. And he felt hers in return, every fear, every hope, every carefully buried feeling she'd tried to deny. By sunset, they were both exhausted and covered in dirt, and the air between them crackled with more than just magic. Again tomorrow, Kale said, his voice rough. And the next day. We'll keep training until you can beat him. Mira met his eyes. Until we can beat him together. The distinction mattered. This wasn't Kale's fight alone anymore. It was theirs. The second night, Finn had a nightmare. Mira felt it through the imprint bond and was moving before she fully woke. She raced down the hallway in her nightclothes, barefoot and half-wild, and burst into Finn's room to find Kale already there. The pup was sobbing in his father's arms, his small body shaking with terror. The bad man, he whimpered, his first real words, shaped by fear. The bad man wants to hurt me. Shoo, I've got you. Kale rocked him gently. The bad man can't get you here. I promise. But Finn reached for Mira, and she went without thinking, scooping him up and pressing her cheek to his soft fur. The imprint bond pulsed, and she sent waves of calm and safety through it until Finn's sobs quieted. Bad man, Finn repeated, but softer now. Smells wrong. He does smell wrong, Mira agreed quietly. But your papa's going to stop him. And I'm going to keep you safe. Both of us together, okay? Finn nodded against her shoulder and yawned, already drifting back to sleep. Mira carried him to his bed and tucked him in, running her fingers through his fur until his breathing deepened. When she turned, Kale was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. You love him. It wasn't a question. You love my son. Myra's throat tightened. The imprint bond, it makes me protective. It's not the same as. It's exactly the same. Kale crossed the room slowly, deliberately. You'd die for him. You nearly did. That's not just a bond, Mira. That's love. She wanted to argue, to maintain the walls she'd built around her heart. But standing there in the dim nursery with Finn sleeping peacefully behind her and Kale looking at her like she was something precious, the walls crumbled. Yes, she whispered. I love him. I can't help it. Good. Kale's hand came up to touch her face again, that same gentle gesture that unmade her every time. Because I need to know he'll have someone who loves him if I don't survive the blood moon. Don't. Mira grabbed his wrist. Don't talk like you're already dead. I'm being realistic. You're being a coward. The words came out harsh, desperate. You're the strongest alpha I've ever met, and you're giving up before the fight even starts. Kale's eyes flashed. I'm not giving up. I'm making sure my son is protected. By planning your own funeral? Mira stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his skin. No. You're going to win, Kale. Because I'm not losing my mate before I even get the chance to know him. The word hung between them, mate. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, the first time she'd acknowledged what they were to each other. And once it was out there, she couldn't take it back. Kale's breath caught. Mira. I know the timing is terrible. I know we barely know each other. I know I was supposed to be your enemy. The words tumbled out faster now, 3 years of loneliness and fear spilling over. But you're mine, Kale Thornclaw. The bond says so, my wolf says so, and if you think I'm going to let some cursed traitor take you away from me before we even have a chance, you're out of your mind. She expected him to argue, to push her away, to remind her that they were practically strangers bound by circumstances neither of them wanted. Instead, he kissed her. It was nothing like she'd imagined, no gentle first kiss, no careful exploration. This was hunger and desperation and 3 years of exile meeting 3 months of grief. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and Mira melted against him with a sound that was half sob, half relief. The mate bond sang. Power surged through them both, silver and gold, healer and alpha, 2 halves of an ancient magic that had been waiting for this moment. Mira felt her wolf rise up and finally recognize its other half. Mine, her wolf howled. Ours. Forever. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Kale's eyes were wild, his wolf barely contained. We can't, the claiming ritual, if we do this now. Then we do it now. Myra's hands fisted in his shirt. The blood moon is tomorrow night, Kale. If we're going to fight together, if we're going to be strong enough to win, we need to be fully bonded. No half measures. No holding back. If I claim you and something goes wrong, then we go wrong together. Mira pulled him down for another kiss, and this time she didn't hold back. I'm not afraid anymore. The claiming ritual was older than pack law, older than territories. It was wolf magic in its purest form, a promise made in blood and breath, sealed with teeth and trust. They claimed each other in the small hours of the morning, in Myra's guest quarters with the door locked and the world kept at bay. Kale's bite on her neck was possessive and perfect, and Myra's answering mark on his shoulder made him groan her name like a prayer. When it was done, they lay tangled together, and the bond between them blazed so bright Mira could see it with her eyes closed. I can feel everything, Kale murmured against her hair. Your heartbeat, your thoughts, your wolf. It's like you're inside my skin. Good. Mira pressed closer, already half asleep. Because you're stuck with me now. His arms tightened around her. Best trap I ever walked into. As they drifted off, power built around them, silver and gold twining together, old magic responding to the completion of the bond. And in the back of Myra's mind, words whispered like an echo of prophecy. When Stormborn Protector and Alpha King unite, the old magic returns. She'd find out what that meant soon enough. The blood moon rose red and ominous over the challenge ring. Wolves from every nearby pack had gathered to witness the trial by combat, hundreds of them, filling the amphitheater carved into Thornclaw's northern border. The air reeked of anticipation and blood hunger. Mira stood at the ring's edge with Finn in her arms, Marcus beside her as her guard. The pup was quiet, his pale gold eyes fixed on his father with an understanding far beyond his months. Kale entered the ring from the south, stripped to the waist, his skin marked with the ritual paint of alpha combat. The claiming mark on his shoulder gleamed silver in the moonlight, Myra's mark, announcing to everyone what they were to each other. Draven entered from the north, and the crowd gasped. He'd changed. The curse had accelerated, twisting his body into something monstrous. His arms were too long, his hands tipped with claws that looked more like talons. His face was still recognizable, but his jaw had elongated, his teeth sharp and numerous. And his eyes were completely black, empty of anything human or wolf. Gods, Marcus breathed. What is he? Cursed, Mira said quietly. And getting worse. The challenge master, a neutral alpha from a neighboring pack, stepped into the center of the ring. Under the blood moon, we gather to witness trial by combat. Kale Thornclaw, Alpha King of the Northern Kingdoms, stands accused of weakness and corruption by Draven Thornclaw, who challenges for leadership. The rules are ancient and absolute: fight until one yields or dies. The victor takes the pack and all that comes with it. Do you both accept these terms? I accept, Kale said, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. I accept, Draven hissed, and his voice was wrong, layered and inhuman. Then let the blood moon bear witness. Begin. They collided with the force of avalanches. Draven was faster than he should have been, stronger than any normal wolf. His claws raked across Kale's ribs, drawing blood, and he laughed, a sound that made Myra's skin crawl. But Kale was fighting smarter. He used their training, moving with precision instead of raw strength, letting Draven's wild attacks tire him out. Through the bond, Mira sent a steady stream of power. Not too much, that would weaken her and leave Finn vulnerable. Just enough to keep Kale strong, to heal the worst of his wounds before they could slow him down. The fight raged on, brutal and bloody. Draven landed blows that should have killed, but Kale kept getting up, kept fighting, kept enduring. And slowly, impossibly, he started to win. That's when Draven's curse fully manifested. His body convulsed, bones cracking and reforming. The transformation was agony made visible, his spine arching, his limbs lengthening, his face pushing forward into something between wolf and monster and nightmare. When it finished, the thing standing in the ring barely resembled Draven at all. It was easily 10 feet tall, covered in matted fur and scales, with 3 rows of teeth and eyes that burned with dark fire. The crowd screamed and scrambled back from the ring. This is forbidden, the challenge master shouted. Dark magic has no place in. The creature that had been Draven backhanded him across the ring. The old alpha hit the stone wall and didn't get up. Kale shifted to his alpha form, massive and powerful, but still dwarfed by the monstrosity in front of him. He snarled a challenge, and the creature lunged. Through the bond, Mira felt Kale's desperation. He couldn't win this fight. Not like this. The curse had made Draven into something beyond any wolf's ability to defeat. But healers didn't fight by destroying. They fought by healing. Mira handed Finn to Marcus. Keep him safe. What are you doing? Marcus grabbed her arm. You can't go in there. Yes, I can. Myra's eyes flashed silver. Because I'm the only one who can end this. She vaulted over the barrier into the ring. Mira, no. Kale's voice roared through the bond. Get back. But Mira was already moving, putting herself between Kale and the monster. She held up her hands, and silver light blazed from her palms. Draven, she called. I know you're still in there. I know the curse is controlling you. But I can help, I can heal you. You just have to let me try. The creature paused, its black eyes fixing on her. For a moment, something almost human flickered in their depths. It's too late, Draven's voice rasped from that horrible mouth. The curse, it's eating me alive. There's nothing left to save. There's always something left. Mira took a step closer, ignoring Kale's snarl of warning. That's what being a healer means. We don't give up. Not ever. She could feel the curse now, writhing and vicious, wrapped around Draven's soul like chains. It was old magic, blood magic, cast by someone with power and malice in equal measure. Breaking it would cost her, maybe everything. But through the bond, she felt Kale's strength. Felt his alpha power flowing into her, amplifying her healer magic. They'd trained for this, learned to fight together, to be 2 halves of a whole. Together, Kale sent through the bond. Whatever you're planning, we do it together. Mira smiled and reached for the curse. Silver light exploded from her hands, wrapping around the monster, sinking into the dark magic that held it together. The curse fought back, trying to transfer to her, and she let it. She pulled it out of Draven piece by agonizing piece, taking it into herself. Pain unlike anything she'd ever felt ripped through her body. The curse was fire and ice and poison, trying to tear her apart from the inside. Her wolf screamed and thrashed, and Mira felt herself starting to shift involuntarily, her body trying to escape the agony. But Kale was there, his power flooding through the bond, holding her together when she should have shattered. His alpha strength became her anchor, and his love, his love, became her shield. You don't die, he commanded. You fight. We both fight. Myra's healer wolf rose up, silver and blazing, and did what no normal wolf could do, it transformed the curse. Took all that dark magic and converted it into pure energy, burning it away until there was nothing left but light. The monster's form began to collapse. Scales fell away, bones cracked and reformed, and the creature shrank. Within seconds, Draven knelt in the center of the ring in human form, gasping and whole. The curse was gone. Mira collapsed, and Kale caught her before she hit the ground. His arms wrapped around her, and through the bond she felt his terror, his relief, his overwhelming pride. You did it, he breathed. You actually did it. We did it, Mira corrected weakly. I would have died without you. Around them, the amphitheater had gone silent. Hundreds of wolves stared at the impossible thing they'd just witnessed, a healer wolf working in perfect harmony with an alpha king, wielding magic that hadn't been seen in a century. Draven raised his head, and his eyes were his own again, brown and human and full of terrible awareness. I remember everything, he said hoarsely. Every life I took. Every lie I told. His voice broke. I don't deserve mercy. Kale helped Mira stand, then faced his cousin. You're right. You don't. The pack law is clear, you conspired to murder the heir, you challenged me with dark magic, you nearly destroyed everything we've built. Execution would be justified. Draven lowered his head, accepting his fate. But, Kale continued, my mate just risked her life to save yours. So I'm giving you a choice. Exile, or execution. Choose. Draven looked at Mira, and something like gratitude flickered in his eyes. Exile. I'll go far from here, live as a rogue. Maybe find some way to atone for what I've done. Then go, Kale said. And if I ever see you in my territory again, the mercy ends. Draven stood slowly and walked toward the ring's edge. But before he left, he turned back. The witch who cursed me, she's still out there. She said there would be others, that the old bloodlines need to be eliminated. Your mate and your son, they're both in danger. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night, and Kale and Mira were left standing in the ring with the blood moon burning overhead. The challenge master, recovered enough to speak, raised his voice. Kale Thornclaw stands victorious. The challenge is ended, the pack is his. The wolves erupted in howls of approval, and the sound echoed across the mountains like thunder. The celebrations lasted 3 days. Wolves from across the northern kingdoms came to witness the official claiming ceremony, where Mira was named Luna Queen and Finn's chosen guardian. She stood beside Kale in the Great Hall, wearing ceremonial furs and feeling completely out of place, while pack after pack came forward to pledge their allegiance. But they weren't just pledging to Kale. They were pledging to her. The healer wolf, they whispered. The first in a century. The one who can cure any illness, break any curse. By the end of the second day, there was a line of sick wolves outside Thornclaw territory, begging for her help. Mira looked at them, mothers with dying pups, warriors with infected wounds, elders with a wasting sickness, and felt the weight of her bloodline settle onto her shoulders like a mantle. You don't have to help them all, Kale said quietly, finding her on the balcony overlooking the courtyard. You're allowed to rest. I know. Mira leaned against him, fitting perfectly under his arm. But they need me. And for the first time in 3 years, I can actually help instead of just surviving. Finn toddled over, he'd started walking just that morning, driven by the need to follow his parents everywhere, and crashed into Myra's legs. She scooped him up, and he giggled and tried to eat her hair. Gentle, Cale chided, but he was smiling. "That's your mother." The word made Myra's breath catch. Mother. She'd never thought she'd be anyone's mother, had accepted exile as the end of that possibility. But here she was, holding a pup who looked at her with complete trust, bound to a mate who loved her, leading a pack that needed her. "I have something to tell you," she said quietly. Cale's expression sharpened. "What's wrong? Are you hurt? Is the bond?" "I'm pregnant." Cale froze. "What?" "About a month along, I think. I've been sensing it for a few days, but I wanted to be sure before I said anything." Mira turned to face him fully, still holding Finn. "The claiming ritual, it must have, and now we're going to have a pup." Cale stared at her like she'd just told him the sun was rising in the west. Then a smile broke across his face, pure, unguarded joy. "We're having a pup," he repeated, wonder in his voice. He pulled her close, careful not to crush Finn between them. "A pup. Our pup. There's more." Mira took his hand and placed it over her stomach. "Can you feel it? The aura?" Cale's eyes widened. "It's glowing. Silver, like yours. This pup is a healer," Mira finished. "Our child is going to be a healer wolf, just like me." For a moment, Cale looked overwhelmed. Then he laughed, the sound bright and free. Of course. Of course our pup would be just as impossible and perfect as their mother." He kissed her there on the balcony, with Finn squirming between them and the whole pack celebrating below, and Mira felt the last piece of her broken heart slot back into place. She'd been exiled for a crime she didn't commit. She'd lived alone for 3 years, convinced she'd never have a pack or a family again. She'd pulled a dying pup from a flooding ravine and thought she was just saving one small life. But that one small life had led her here, to a mate who loved her, a son who needed her, a pack who respected her, and a future that glowed with possibility. When Stormborn Protector and Alpha King unite, the old magic returns. The prophecy had been right. The old magic had returned, not just in Myra's healer abilities, but in the way she and Cale fit together, in the way their bond made them stronger than either could be alone. A new era was beginning, for them and for all shifter kind. And as the sun set over Thornclaw territory, painting the sky in shades of gold and silver, Mira held her family close and finally let herself believe in hope. Far to the south, in a tower made of shadow and bone, a witch watched the celebrations through a scrying pool. Her ancient face twisted with rage. "A healer wolf lives," she hissed. "And breeds more of her kind. This cannot stand." She reached for ingredients, nightshade and hemlock, grave dirt and blood. The old bloodlines would not be allowed to rise again. Not while she still had breath to cast curses and power to unmake what should not be. The war was far from over. But that, pack mate, is a story for another night. For now, the Stormborn Protector and her Alpha King had won their battle. They'd built their family from the ashes of loss and the flood of chance. They'd proven that sometimes the wolf you save becomes the one who saves you in return. And isn't that what pack is really about? Finding your people in the most unexpected places, and fighting like hell to keep them safe. The storm that threatened to destroy everything became the catalyst for renewal. For sometimes what we protect in our darkest hour becomes the very thing that saves us all. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.